Okay, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to commence the meeting of the Caneo Recreation and Park District, and we're honored to have Mr. Chuck Huffer lead us in a pledge.
And facing the flag, hand over your heart, if you're ex-military, free to salute after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Huffer. Roll call, please, Aline. Here.
Yes.
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 Very good. All present have a quorum. Special presentations, there are none this evening. Items from the public, no public. Well, thank you, Mark. Approval of the agenda, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Director Nichols and Cusworth. No changes or moving of any items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion will pass. Item 6, consent calendars A, B, and C. Anybody would like to pull any of those for discussion? Director Huffer.
I'd like to make a motion to approve consent calendars A, B, and C.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Thank you, Director Cusworth. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion will pass.
Mr. Chair, just want to point out, since I wasn't present, I'll need to abstain from the minutes portion of that.
Okay, some people do, some people don't, so I don't want
Okay.
to, but you're more than welcome to abstain. So let the vote indicate 4-1. Thanks, Helene. Item 8, I said no deferred matters. Item 8, items for discussion, CRPD updates regarding COVID-19. Mr. General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lang and members of the board. We've been doing this now for several months since this all began, and we are taking a bit of a step backwards in terms of the reopening. And as virtually all of you, I'm sure, are aware, some reclosings, some aspects of sectors of the economy have been ordered to be reclosed in light of the numbers that Ventura County in particular is experiencing. If Mark, you wouldn't mind going to that VC emergency website. So one of the things I wanted to kind of walk you through and show you is on the VC emergency website, it's, got the big screen, and if you scroll down, you'll get these numbers, right? And you go a little, you can, see the numbers of the cases, scroll down a little further, and there's this gray box. And in that gray box, at the very bottom on the, Mark, your left-hand side, at the very bottom, it says, this, I think California, yeah, that one. What does that say? I can't read.
It's hard to read.
Yeah, so that's the California Department of Public Health. That's the measurements that the state is measuring the county's progress on or the COVID virus in the county, or our progress in dealing with the coronavirus in the county. So you can see those 6 metrics. 4 are green, which is good that we have met the state standard, but 2 continue to not meet the standard. And I apologize, I know what they are, but I can't read. I can't read them from here.
Welcome to the group.
So
It's a 14-day case rate per 100,000
yes.
and change in 3-day average COVID-19 hospitalized patients.
So those are the 2 of the 6 standards that the county is not currently meeting. We're meeting the available hospital beds, we're meeting the ventilators, the tests available, all those kinds of things. And I think the case rate positive is still in a good green situation. So we that is what the state is kind of measuring all the different counties by. So I wanted you to just see that. And then I wanted to take you back up to the top of the page, Mark, and you're going to need to find the frequently asked questions portion, which I think if you just click on coronavirus, it'll take you to the like frequently asked questions. Yeah, that's BC Recovers. Yeah, so there'll be a fact. Keep going, scrolling down. See the frequently asked questions. Yes. And then hit FAQs. So here's where this is kind of interesting because this website's evolved as the coronavirus has evolved. And so now what's happening are the orders from the county health department there's a formal order, but the clarifications and the nuance is often in the frequently asked questions section. And those now are being changed on somewhat of a regular basis, and the county will update in a little red box what the last date of change of those questions and answers are, or if they've added an all new question or answer. And they are very clear that the frequently asked questions have the same force and effect as a law, as a public health order, and therefore the penalties for not complying are run with those frequently asked questions. So you really need to not just say, oh, that's interesting info. This is the rules. So when you scroll down a bit, if a little up higher, there's our gatherings allowed. So that's one of the ones where I think we've let slide a bit as a general rule, because once the stay-at-home order kind of was lifted and it was kind of like focused on reopening, I think people started to forget that the gatherings are still generally not allowed. And the only reason you can get together with others and stay 6 feet apart is if you're engaging in one of those permissible activities. So it's important that that's kind of one of the underlying rules. So you're not allowed to gather unless you're gathering for one of the other purposes. And there's a lot of other purposes you can gather for. You can show up at a board meeting, you can show up at work, you can go shopping, you can, for groceries and that kind of thing. So
Am I not able to read at a distance, or does that say no gatherings are not permitted? Which sounds to me like a double negative.
it says no period, I think, doesn't it?
Oh, okay. I missed the period this far away. So
It's really faint too.
Right.
I have good eyesight, but it's.
Yeah.
Work on that.
sorry.
No, comma, gatherings are not.
Sorry.
permitted. Right, I gotcha. This wise guy over there. He's been looking at the IRS numbers too long. So if you scroll down, the big change that is affecting us, it's towards the bottom, Mark. It's the team sports. Keep going. Rochelle, do you know where that is? It's near the bottom. Right. And outdoor recreation. So this is the big news that closed or clarified. It closed. You can call it a loophole, or it is now disallowing activity that we thought was permitted. And this is where they clearly indicate that a sports group, a sports organization, or a coach or an individual team cannot use the day camp provision to conduct sports that would otherwise be their team sport. So even CRPD has some sport camps that we had to, adjust. But for the, for this will be frustrating for a lot of folks that have been using our parks of late, is that pretty much it says you cannot participate in organized team sports, you can't have games, you can't have practices, you can't have skill drills, you can't have conditioning, you cannot gather to be with other people on your team to be part of the sport. So the intent, I believe, from the health department is that, look, we want you to get out and you get exercise, go to the park, run all around, stay right next to people in your household if you want to. But when it comes to being near anyone else, you have to be 6 feet apart, and we don't want teams to gather. And my guess I haven't talked to anybody, but I'm guessing that in their observations, they've seen it far more frequently than they'd like of people not staying that 6 feet apart that are on teams that are, it goes from skills to, well, let's just have a game. And the next thing you know, people are bumping into each other and panting and breathing on each other. And that, I think, has been the source of the county's concern with that activity. That's really the big new change. So for those watching on TV, the parks remain open. All of the parks are open, and we want to keep all of the amenities within the parks open, but they cannot be used for gathering or team sports or playing with people outside your own household. They're really for people within your own household. So a game with your family, your kids, shoot hoops, play horse, but you can't get your buddies down and have a basketball game at the basketball court. That's not okay under the health orders. And they have been out and looking at that. So again, all the parks are open, all the amenities within the parks are open, but they need to be used consistent with the health orders. The community center buildings themselves remain closed to the general public, but they are being used for supporting our camps, which we have many, many camps going because camps are allowed. And we are doing those within the guidelines. And per the state and county rules, the playgrounds remain closed. So community centers and playgrounds remain closed, but everything else is open. Just as an internal kind of order for good measure, I'd just like you to know that Shelley, our HR director, has had 2 Zoom calls now with all the full-time and part-time employees to try to remind everybody of what the safety protocols are and how to stay safe at work. We do have our worksite specific plans at all the various locations, and just like everybody else that might be affected out there, we too have had our own COVID experience, and we have now had 2 positive COVID employees within the district. So we're taking this extremely serious. It's something to reckon with, and we are, like everybody else, trying to do our job, provide the park services, amenities, take care of the kids, and do daycare. But we also need to follow all the protocols that are out there. So that's the COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Going on to item 9.
Excuse me,
new
Mr.
items.
Chair.
Yes.
I just had a follow-up to the general manager's comments, if I
Sure,
could, for a
go ahead,
second.
please.
I received an email on this topic from a gentleman who coaches a soccer team. And he had a very detailed email, which I asked the general manager to respond to, which he did quite eloquently, and then had a couple interactions. And it's in your packet. Well, it's in your folder that was presented tonight. The gentleman's name is Scott Nave. And I wanted to point out a couple things in his response. He's been a coach for soccer for many years, and says, one thing I wanted to point out, your staff has always been easy to deal with and very responsive to our questions and requests, particularly Dana. And so I just, a shout out to her, because I know getting fields and the sports teams changes every year, the requirements, and a very hectic job. And I know her team does has their hands full, but just thank you for her and the team representing the district well, because here's a regular customer who has to deal with these on a regular basis and is very complimentary. So first of all, thank you to that group. The second thing I want to point out is he was pointing out that the challenges of trying to coach soccer when you can't get on the field and gather with your team, and asked if he could get the contact information for other sports organizations so they collectively could reach out to the county. So he is kind of heading up that effort. Hopefully that will prove fruitful for him and his efforts. And his idea was, it may not make a difference, but it's important for them to hear the perspective of the coaches, the players, and the parents And that's not just the bureaucracy of the administration and the COVID numbers that we hear all the time, because it's real people encountering real issues. And I noticed he pointed out here that he had 2 parents that are anxious and waiting to write letters. And he's also mentioned that he's lost kids to other clubs because they're practicing and he's not. And I just thought, these are the types of consequences that we have to contend with in these situations. A lot of it is well beyond our control. But I thought it worthwhile to look at this and just to be reminded that, our business is working with families in our community. We're trying to provide recreational services, trying to provide parks that families can go to and enjoy, a lot of amenities, which we've talked about many times. And when it's out of our control as to what can or can't happen, we're not able to serve as best we can. And I know Rochelle and her team has done a great job this summer to try and patch that together to do what we can. But this to me just kind of really emphasized that, it's real people with real challenges. And sometimes we forget that we just, look at the numbers and say, okay, where do we go from here? But anyhow, you get a chance to read that. It's certainly worthwhile. And thank you to General Manager and the whole team. And we'll see what happens with this as far as interaction with the county. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Yes, Director Cusworth.
So that, from what you said, it gave me a question of where are these other teams practicing? This isn't a CRPD ruling, it's a county ruling, isn't it?
So what this is the classic frustration of somebody who's following all the rules. He probably has done he says he's done all of the right things to put together a camp. And, we did the work to do this, and all of the teams now that have done it realize how much work, the protocols you have to put in place and the rules and the plans that you have to, it's a bit of work, especially if you're a volunteer coach, to put all that together to run a camp, which were okay before this ruling to come out. If you can keep all your players 6 feet apart and you're, doing your exercises, how is that not okay? And then to have that closed down, and then there's plenty of people not following the rules, and that sense of frustration, we are going to have a staff person go out with the new county frequently asked question that was up on there that explains very clearly you cannot have organized sports. We are going to be physically walking up and handing people those rules and letting them know that that is not okay, that's not allowed. And I've had a conversation with the police chief and city manager. We aren't going to cite anyone or anything like that as CRPD staff, but we do have they're aware of it, and they know that there is that bubbling sense of frustration about, well, some people are just totally flouting the rules and others are adhering to the rules. And so because they do want to make sure we finally bend this curve down and get to the numbers low enough that we can start doing stuff again, they really want to discourage that kind of stuff. So I think, people that aren't following the rules might have someone from Ventura County Sheriff's at their door or at the field at some point. It's not fun for anyone. I know it's frustrating for all the families. That's not what we're all about. Our whole mission is bringing people together to do fun stuff or provide facilities for that. So all of this is just not fun and opposite of what we want to do, but it's something it seems we need to do right now. So I could get into the
No, that answered my
Yeah.
question. I was just saying, so there are people who are violating the rules in the county. So you're just going to be checking up on that.
correct.
That's basically what it is.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's interesting how industrious people and teams are. So we're on calls with other park professionals in the county and even LA County regularly. And one of the things that's developed among the sports teams out there is that they realize that the biggest thing a park agency can do is withhold permits from them in the future, right? So if we know our local team is ASO 9, just won't listen to us and they don't do anything we ask them to do and they're breaking all the rules, well, we can tell ASO 9, we're not going to give you permits next season or whatever. Well, the teams have that same experience in all these other jurisdictions. And so they've all realized what they need to do is a guy from Fresno needs to play a guy from Calabasas in Thousand Oaks. And they just show up and play, uniforms, parents, umpires. And when we go out there and say, what are you guys doing? And it's a team from Fresno and a team from Calabasas. What are we going to do? You know, and that's actually happening all over. Like that, you know, I'm hearing of teams in Thousand Oaks and, you know, other jurisdictions. So that's something, the workaround everybody's been sort of doing. And it's just one of those things that has developed as folks really do want to get out and play, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So that's been an interesting social development to watch.
The other thing I can add, having gone through, and you have too, I know Chuck is very aware of it, club soccer and actually club sports in general for youth sports, if you have a student or a kid that you want to promote as to getting into maybe that college of your choice, you'll do whatever it takes to get them to that next level. And if CRPD isn't allowing it, they'll go to Santa Barbara, they'll go to Lancaster, they'll do whatever it takes to get their kid on the right team. And that's regardless of COVID. I mean, it's a very cutthroat operation. That's the same for softball, volleyball, lacrosse, you name it. It's across the sport, youth sports world, where, you know, anything they can do to get an edge. So if there's a team they're not following rules, but they're getting away with it somewhere, they'll just move their kid over there because they want the best for their kid. So that's another part of the element. Now, Scott didn't imply anything with that, but I know that happens day in and day out.
Okay, anything else before we go on to the next item? Okay, moving on to item 9, new items, 9A, 2020 Millennium Review of Conflict of Interest.
Thank you, Chair Lang and members of the board. I have to remind myself of what Aline wrote. So every 2 years, we have this item come before the board. And what happens is the County of Ventura, to kind of keep our conflict of interest code fresh, they require that every 2 years we resubmit the same code. And often nothing changes, except maybe in this case, somebody had a title change, somebody in the room. All that we have to change on our conflict of interest code resolution is change the title from information technology analyst to information technology supervisor. None of the disclosure categories are changing, and we're all filing with the clerk of the board of the, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of the general manager? Okay, we need to have a motion to approve and adopt the conflict of interest code for the CRPD and authorize the general manager to forward that to the clerk of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Director Huffer.
I will move that we approve staff recommendation, which I will not read again since you read the whole thing.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Thank you, Director Cuthbert. Any comments or questions associated with this item? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion will pass. We're moving right along to item 10, reports and announcements. Mr. Harris, this is your first chance to say something. Park Division. Oh, no, excuse me. I'm sorry. That's reports and announcements. 10A through E. Anybody have any questions, or Director Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I did have a question on 10E, the Youth Outreach Summary Report. I noticed on page 94, there was some photographs of some nice young gentlemen on bicycles, and it was noting that the Youth Outreach continues to provide safe and working bicycles. I was curious to know what the source is of those bicycles.
Sure. Thanks,
New member who hasn't been around.
Director Nichols. So there is a program through our youth outreach program, and Pete Martinez, he collects bikes from different people in the community that donate them. And then he has a partnership with a local bike company, and they actually get the bikes into working condition. I think they even give the kids a helmet and get it all set up. And then Pete, along with some school personnel, identify youth that need bicycles in order to get to work, get to school, get around, that type of thing. And then they'll let the kids know, meet with them, and then give them to them. So it's part of the partnership through youth outreach, which is CVUSD and CRPD working together to provide needs for kids that are high risk.
And is there some mechanism that people are aware that there is an opportunity to donate bicycles?
I believe that Pete puts information out there. I mean, I think he has a ton of bicycles, so
Oh,
there comes
okay.
a point where you get too
Oh,
many
okay.
bicycles.
All right,
But if you know of someone, I would call Pete and see if he has a need for them.
okay.
Because we don't have a lot of storage for the bicycles. So we kind of try to get what we have, get it to the bike shop, get them fixed up, and then get them back out.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this
Thank
is
you,
a
Mr. Chair.
program that's been going on for a number of years, very successful, and I've heard a number of recipients, thanking CRPD for the bike. So, and just on your topic of, repairing bike shops and so forth, I tried to take my bike down to Newbury Park bicycle shop a couple days ago. They have over 200 in the queue. They've run out of storage room, so they wouldn't even let me leave my bike. So it's a big popular activity right now. All right, that concludes reports and announcements, unless someone would like to discuss another item. Yes, Director Huffer.
Just a comment, it just rather saddened me to look at those reports and the enrollment reports and the special events summer report and the youth outreach, and it's all canceled, gone, canceled. Hopefully one of these days.
Yes, agree. And as long as that topic is still open there, if you take a moment to read outreach reflections or outreach worker reflections, I think that says a lot about our staff and how dedicated they are and continue to work as best they can under awful conditions here. Okay, any other items want to discuss? We're moving on now, Mr. Hare, department reports. 11A Parks Division.
Well, thank you, Chair Lang, members, excuse me, members of the board. I have absolutely no report tonight, but I just want to express that it'll be 7 weeks since I'll see you guys in the next board meeting. I'll miss you all very greatly, especially some more than others. No, I'm available for questions. No report tonight.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Hare?
7 weeks.
That's our next board meeting.
Yes,
Didn't count it.
I just did.
It's so tempting to come back with something, but I just want to say, I did get a chance to do that new exit road through Canal Creek South, and it is a very nice road, so,
Looks nice, doesn't it?
yeah.
okay. No questions for Mr. Hare. Moving on to 11B Recreation Division report. Ms. Callis.
Thank you, Chair Lang, members of the board. So you guys have your rec highlights in your packet. So I'm not going to go through all of it, but I have a couple things on there. Like Jim said, we're going to be having a staff person come back to work on Monday, and we'll be dropping off letters to community folks or organizations that are using our fields inappropriately for group games and stuff to that effect. So that will be starting on Monday. Also this month, as you know, is Park and Recreation Month. And one of the things, if you haven't noticed, in the Acorn, the last 2 Thursday, we have 2 staff that were acknowledged for their great work that they do for CRPD. So Patty Ham was the first one that we recognized, and Shelly Howell is the second one. We're not giving who's getting the next 2. It's a surprise every week for the person that's getting it. So there will be 2 more people recognized in the next 2 weeks with ads in the newspaper also. So that's just kind of something fun. And if you've been driving around to any of our community centers or the shops, you will have seen little signs that say, "We love our staff," just trying to remind our staff that we appreciate and love everything that they're doing for us, because really without them, we wouldn't be doing any of the things that we are doing. concert on August 16th has been canceled. We're looking to reschedule it for next year as we've done with all the other concerts. So we're still working on that. We have not canceled the September Labor Day concert. We would do that 30 days out. I'm assuming it's probably going to be canceled, but we're looking at some other options and see if maybe a drive-in concert might work, if that's allowed at that point. So we're looking into some other things to see if we can do something. We have over 20 Zoom classes that people can actually sign up for. So it's on our virtual website now. There's actually a registration button. You type in Zoom and there's a multiple of classes, different types from fitness to meditation to learning about opera and stuff. So there's some interesting classes and they're all fee-based. So they are paying a little something for them. So I thought that was pretty cool. Our staff are getting really creative because we can't do what we traditionally do. So we're having to come up with other things. I don't know if you're aware, but the email just went out to all CVUSD families that in the new school year that it will be a remote learning, 100% remote learning. So our staff is already working on what options we might be able to do to extend camp to a fall camp. So we'll be looking at doing something with the youth in the fall that will not be our traditional stuff, but might be like a fall camp like we're doing now, a half day or an all day camp. Obviously the kids have to go to school, so we have to figure out what those details are and what times of the day people will be going and all that good stuff so that we can confirm what we're going to try to offer. But we are looking to develop some kind of new programming for the fall since we're looking like we're not going to be back to our traditional stuff. We're also looking at our program guides. We're looking at going all online with them. This would help us save some money, especially for the next 3 program sessions. So I'm getting some price quotes on what it would save me. What if I did a postcard to encourage people to go online? So I'm looking at some different things there to try to cut back some costs there. We have sports and reservations, as you guys kind of mentioned. We were changing things. We were getting ready to do reservations and all sorts of things. And our staff were really working hard with everyone. And then all of a sudden it changed again. So right now, the only thing you can do in reservations is weddings outside, church outside. So those would be the 2 rentals. And then you can do fitness outside. So those are the only things at this point that I can think of that we're actually renting our properties for. I think that is what I had on this. And then I did want to let you know that we did crunch some numbers. Enrollment right now for summer, since you guys got the spring, which was so depressing in the book. But right now for summer currently, we have 2,216 people enrolled as of the 15th, which is today. And then, but if you compare it to last year we had 10,000 kids, over 10,000 kids enrolled. So we're about 79% down in our enrollment compared to summer last year. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you, because our staff is doing really good at managing and monitoring their budgets and stuff. So for 2019, we had a revenue of $992,000 to date. This year, we have a revenue of $539,975 to date. But our expenses, we are keeping in line. So we are actually net. Last year, we were about $250,000 negative. This year, right now, we're $63,000 negative. So we're $186,000 more in the positive than last year, just by the great work that the staff's doing at balancing their expenses, even with the fact that we are running a lot less programs, and our programs are barely either budgeted to break even or budgeted to where they're not covering overhead. So that subsidy that the CRPD gives us, the 3.5 million every year basically is helping, and I'm trying to keep it still in line. So I'm not going to ask hopefully for any more. And I think we're running at 90% of our revenue to our expenses. Last year, we're at 90%. Our revenue covered 90% of our expenses. Right now, our revenue is covering 90% of our expenses. So I'm really, really proud of the staff. And like I said, we're just getting ready to constantly every week, sometimes every day, we're like, okay, what do we do for programming next? So they're really trying to think creatively and out of the box on what we can do and how we can meet the needs of the community. With that, I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you for a good report. Director Huffer.
A question and then a comment. The question, you mentioned that the 3 categories that you are able to reserve facilities for, and I'm just trying to picture what would be a fitness program that you're renting out space for.
So we're doing we've moved all of our indoor fitness that we were allowed to do, which you can't do really indoors anymore. We've moved that outside. But for a rental group, and we've got people that are breaking the rules. There's a lot of gyms that just got closed, and now all of a sudden we have people out in the parks and stuff that are working out with no insurance and no reservation or permit with us. But yeah, yoga, Tai Chi, Zumba, you can do any of those things. You're supposed to be, you know, outside at least 6 feet distancing, and you can do those types of classes. So we offer classes. Dos Vientos, I think in your highlights, has a strength and core agility one. I saw it out there the other day, and they were all spread out and doing their fitness outside.
So what would happen if say a soccer group came along and wanted to do fitness training?
You know, that's where we were going with camp, and that's where the soccer groups were supposed to do the agility and everything. Unfortunately, because the soccer group is a athletic group, they're not allowed to, based off of what we saw, do any kind of, you know, training at all, not even a game, but they can't work out. So the fitness people are fitness businesses that we would rent it. It's a yoga teacher. It's a fitness person, not a sports
A running
person.
store hosted a group of runners and they did their workouts, that'd be okay, but a soccer group, because they're a sports team, can't. That makes
That's
a
the
lot of
way
sense.
it's read. We
Yeah.
read it right now. So
All right. And then the
Yeah.
comment, and I think you talked about it one of the previous meetings, but I happened to spend a little time with Tim Hagel on Wednesday, and he was talking about all the great things that the district and the Safe Passage programs are doing for the kids over at Canal Creek and Warwick, particularly the food programs for the kids. So I think that's great.
Hagel's an amazing man and does a lot for a couple big groups in the community. So we just try to help him.
Good.
Chuck, I have a suggestion for you. Pastor Huffer, you can have a congregation of soccer players.
Well, we're trying to get the Kiwanis Club established as a religion, so
There you
you know,
go.
we figure them would be okay there, so.
I was going to suggest they have a soccer protest.
That's another way. Okay, Director Cusworth.
Are people signing up for the Zoom classes?
Yes.
And do they have a limit, or can they?
The
can you have
Zoom,
unlimited?
some may have a limit. It depends on what the instructor, how their technology skills are. But on a Zoom class, you can usually do a lot more than you can in person. Mhm.
Yes, Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Collis, I know this is very premature, seeing that there was just an announcement today regarding the school district, but will you be investigating perhaps using their facilities if you do like fall camps? I mean, I know you're limited with the number of recreation centers, but if now all of a sudden you have 40 school gyms available, what do you think?
So my guess would be if you're not allowed to have school on campus, they're not going to allow anybody to use campus. That would be my guess.
Good idea, though.
I mean, that would follow because the we've opened our community pool, but the school districts won't allow us to run programs in their pools. So I doubt seriously they would allow gyms.
Well, maybe a few parents would feel otherwise. We'll see.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, again, thanks, Rochelle, for a good report. Ms. Smith, Management Services Division.
Thank you, Chair and members. Just a quick comment. There are some rumblings about legislation that would affect the unemployment benefits that the district would be obligated to provide. So we're following that and we'll be reporting if there's any change coming forward. But other than that, I'm available for questions.
Okay, yes, Director Huffer.
I know it's been out there for a while, but I just happened to read this morning in the newspaper about Prop 15. And I wonder if we started looking at any mid to long-term effects if Proposition 15 were to pass, as to what effect it might have on our finances.
I will check it out.
Devastating.
No. Oh, no, 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 no. They're gonna fully tax commercial property.
Yeah,
I mean, we depend on property tax.
right.
Property taxes are going up.
Okay.
Not personal, not residential,
Prop
but commercial
13.
property taxes.
Okay, not Prop 13. Okay.
I'm not familiar with how it would be distributed. That's where I
Yeah. But I'm just curious, 'cause I'm sure it's not gonna happen overnight, but, you know, 'cause we have some pretty big corporations owning lots of property, so, yeah, I'd be interested in finding out.
Okay. No other questions for Ms. Smith? General Manager's report, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair and Lang, members of the board. We do have a need for closed sessions tonight. We actually have two that are listed. So I just want to let everyone know that when we do break in a little bit for closed session, we will go into closed session. That probably is going to take 45 minutes or half hour to an hour, somewhere in that range. The Zoom call is going to end because we are going to be in closed session, but I anticipate we will have an announcement, which means we'll come back into open session. The formal record of our meeting is the audio tape that Aline has. We will, make our announcement in open session on the audio tape, but the Zoom meeting is going to end when this part of the meeting does end, when we break to closed session. So I wanted folks to know that. And though not formally addressed in how we conduct these Zoom meetings, we have had some typed in questions based on the board's discussion to date. And, rather than just ignore those, Tracy, I would like to deal with those during the items from the public coming up. So just wanted you to have that heads up.
Okay. Yes, Director Huffer.
I obviously have far too much time on my hands because I'm reading the LA Times practically from cover to cover. Again, it's something that's been out there for quite a while, but reminded me when I read the article about the Great American Outdoors Act. Is that going to have any, do we get anything out of that, or is that more state and
No,
federal?
so it's primarily for the feds, and it's going to take care of like national parks and national forests, that kind of stuff. It's for that giant backlog they have, but it's going to fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which does do grants to local agencies. So we have had Land and Water Conservation grant success in the past, so we stand to benefit from that, and I personally have already written my letter of support to have that pass, but I'd be happy to also have the district write one formally as well, so that it would benefit the park district for sure.
Okay, well, I would suggest that we have one from the park district. Maybe you could send out some format that maybe individual board members could use as well.
Absolutely. I just had to click on I'm a member of the National Park Conservation Association or something. So I just had click on a link and my letter went. But yeah, I will send one.
Okay. Any questions of the general manager at this point? If not, we're moving on to item 11E, director's reports and follow-up reports on meetings and conferences attended. Directors. Director Cusworth.
Well, I haven't done that much, but one thing I wanted to thank you for was this mask. I don't wear masks much because I almost never leave my house. I've been in my house for months. But we went to Sacramento and this fits really nice in my wallet. You go like this, roll it up. So then when we had to stop to go to fast food and use the restroom, I had a quick mask. So thank you for the mask. In that note, we went to a park and it was like a super park in Rockland. It had an 18 disc golf course, a dog park, tennis courts, softball courts, playground equipment, a skate park. I thought, wow, this park has about 4 of our parks all together. I don't know if they had any other park in that park, but one thing I wanted to wonder is they had a water, area where kids could kind of play in the water. Not very big. I know they have one in Agora.
Splash Park.
Yeah, splash park, splash pad park. So we don't have one. I wonder if I'm just putting that out there, that's something that could go into a park in the future.
We've put that out there in the past,
Have you? Okay.
but nothing wrong with, trying it again.
Yeah, I don't know how much that would entail, but there were a lot of kids enjoying that. Everything else we have, they used wood chips in their dog park. I've never seen wood chips before. And they also had a big volunteer component in their dog park, so that our dog park people haven't wanted to have as much of a volunteer component, but that was interesting. Then I went hiking with the Costco. Thank you to Mr. Huffer for directing me on how to get to one of their obscure trails that I couldn't find. So I'm almost done with the Costco challenge. I'm glad for that. Went hiking with Jim there by the freeway. And I think that's about it. Oh, no, I spent some time. This wasn't on CRPD time. It was on Stagecoach In time, but you all have my historical driving tour that Aline passed out. So I put this together. It takes a little while to go through it if you're going to actually drive it, but I thought it would be a good activity for people to do if they, can't go to museums or do anything. So I don't know that a lot of you would actually go and drive it because a lot of you may already know these, but it was pretty fun when I did my test drive to you just sort of drive through the city, and then some of these things you may not know. And just to read through it and mentally drive through it only takes about 10 minutes. So if you want to get a little bit of historical information and you don't actually want to drive it, I recommend just reading through it. And hopefully, I don't know what the Stagecoach Inn's going to do with this, but I sent it to them, so it may go on their website or something for people, or And I wanted to mention that of all of these historical landmarks, I think I put in 16. 7 or 8 of them have connection with CRPD, which shows that CRPD is, of course, has their finger in all the good stuff in this county or this city. So I was very happy to see that. So hopefully that will be something that some of you might enjoy, or at least pick out some of the things you haven't seen and drive over to them. And I guess that's it.
Thank you for your report and your efforts on that historical drive-through. Director Nichols.
Yes, I'm first of all, I'm looking forward to the YouTube version of this historical tour. I think you need to narrate at each site and have a little video for us. I think it'd be an excellent
I'm sorry
opportunity.
you put that into my mind, because that's something I would probably do and like to do.
I'm counting on it. I am counting
I
on
bet
it.
Mark could help you out with that.
So that could happen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols, especially since I won't be going back to work full-time, I guess.
There you
I'm
go.
wondering if Canal Valley changed their doing half days when LA went remote. Yeah, I think that that might have an influence. I'm not knowing how it's going to be, but just to give you an idea, I've already had some retired teachers having parents call them asking for tutors because remote teaching is not that effective. We already know that, but I think the district didn't want to put up with liability and the amount of expense that it was going to cost. But as far as teaching goes, it's not as effective. So you might think of offering homework clubs and tutoring, and it would probably be less expensive than most people are paying. And I think there'll be a huge need for that. So a lot of parents would probably appreciate that sort of a service coming on, not just camps, but actually just helping kids with stuff. Yes.
On that point, we already have that going on at the teen center where teachers work with the kids on various subjects. So
Okay.
it's a bit ongoing, it has been going.
Okay. It might be expanded into elementary school too. I'm just saying that there's going to be a bigger need for that. Even, with students that normally would do well if the parents aren't wanting to follow up, because at least in my grade, it's basically a directed home school because the parents have to follow up with everything. And if parents aren't wanting to follow up with everything, they might be willing to pay somebody else to go through it. So it's just a suggestion, even though we have it, it might expand considering
Sure.
the situation.
Sure. Yes, Director Nichols.
Thank you. Got a couple of things to report. Mr. Segedy, I sent you a video, so I don't know if that's something you could, if you're able to play, but it was one of my show and tell things. Everyone's asking, how was my vacation? Well, here is one of the videos that I took while we were on vacation, if it actually will run. That's part of what we were doing. We were taking a Jeep tour through the Sequoia Kings Canyon, or Sequoia National Forest, in search of giant sequoia trees, which we did find. And thank you, that was it, just a little snippet there. It was, my daughter insisted that we take a picture of me hugging the tree because she knows I like trees, but and the tree is about as big as round as all these tables put together. I couldn't really get my arms around it too well, but it was fun. It was good to get away with the family up in the Sierras, breathe some natural fresh air and without having to have masks on all the time. It was quite a treasure to be with them. Quick rundown on some of the things that I have been doing here. On June 23rd, I attended or participated in the Rancho Potrero Ad Hoc Committee on the facility out there, what we're going to be proposing out that direction. And then on June 24th, attended the COSCA board meeting. July 7th, had a teleconference with the general manager and some of the updates of what was happening. And then July 13th, I also took the tour with Director Huffer and our general manager of the Page Lane Jans Road adjacent to the freeway trail hike, which was eye-opening. And then yesterday, I attended my very first California Association of Recreation and Park Districts board meeting. So that was a wonderful experience. I just got a couple quick things to mention about that. One of the things that we covered was like a recap of the virtual conference. And for those of us who did attend last year up at Lake Tahoe, which has been their regular routine for year after year, they did it virtually this year. They felt it was quite a success. They actually made a profit at it, which was contrary to their live and in-person conferences. But one of the things we were talking about was when you're at a conference or a Zoom meeting or anything like that, you can take care of business and you can get the core information taken care of, but you miss out on the social interactions and what we call the water cooler conversations and the informal part that you really benefit from with conferences. And so as we started continuing to talk about that, they realized, well, maybe we need to have more opportunities, at least to exchange information, more on an informal basis. And so a committee was formed to start a kind of like an educational series, much like the Special Districts Association does, where they have webinars that come out once a month on either for the administration, for general managers, or for board members. So that was an outgrowth of that virtual conference on how the services could be expanded by CARPD to meet the needs when, you may have waited to go up and talk to somebody that you knew and say, hey, how do I do this? So if you have topics of interest that you may have seen come across from the Special Districts Association or something like this, but you really want it targeted towards Rec and Park, this will be the venue for that. So they're open up to suggestions. And following up with that is, as you know, I mentioned at the last meeting I attended, which was 2 meetings ago, I was expressing some of the statistics and things I was uncovering regarding COVID and children and, what was or wasn't the truth and the facts and figures of it all. And so I was sharing that, as was suggested, to the board to say, well, how do we, kind of rally together if there is an interest and perhaps make this an advocacy organization, because we're all in this together and we're all navigating one at a time, one district at a time, calling neighbors, as the general manager was saying. Say, well, what are you doing? Well, well, what are you going to do? So what if we all banded together and started kind of making it proactive? This is what we'd like to do, and actually tell the governor, actually tell our county officials, and have it based on what we've researched as a statewide organization rather than some rogue districts. And so that was also well received, and I think that's going to be our first conversation that we have with the CARPD webinar series. So we'll see where that goes, because as we have seen, this is not something that just kind of happened and is going away, but we're going to be with it for a while, and perhaps a whole nother school year, and we'll see where it goes. So it's not just a little blip in the screen. We're having to contend with this long term. So hopefully this will prove beneficial, and the park districts will kind of speak up and voice their concern. And it also kind of blended into the current legislative effort to recognize special districts, as entities. And I said this would be another venue to do that, because you have the states, the counties, the cities, and the special districts kind of get lost down in the bottom end of this some of these discussions. And so if we can elevate ourselves to kind of be part of that discussion, as this is now highlighting some of those concerns, it was quite well received. So I'm anxious to see if this maybe can be another venue to bring up common rec and park concerns at the state level, rather than just talking amongst ourselves. That elevates that concern. So as we get these types of topics, and it's not just a local issue but a statewide issue, pass it on to me and we'll run it up the flagpole and see what we can do to move forward. So that's all I had to say. I did have a question though. Thank you for the face mask. I noticed I'm all set for Halloween now. I got one for each color. But again, I just was curious, who got these? So is this just like all to staff, or I saw something about campers. I just was curious as to how these are going to be used.
So the black one is actually from the therapeutics unit, and they purchased them for their campers and staff. And so I saw them and thought you guys might like them. The bandana ones we purchased, I think 4 or 5 different colors for staff to have out in the field for campers and or staff if they forget their mask, because it is a requirement that everybody has a face covering on them at all times. They may not wear them all the time, but they have to have them on them at all times. So sometimes if someone forgets, which I think parents have been doing really good at, and the kids wear them when they're asked to wear them. So it hasn't been a problem at all.
That just reminds me of one other thing is, when I was on that Jeep tour, they had us, they called them buffs, which is that you put over your neck and it's like a round scarf, and then you just lift it up when you need it. Yeah, like Tom has there. And they said, hey, we were using these long before you had to, because if you're out there on these dusty roads, you need that. But I thought that'd be a great thing, because I see these things scattered all over the place on the floor. I mean, it's on streets, on trails. I mean, they're everywhere. And something like that is not going to get so easily discarded. So next go around, something like that too. But anyhow, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Director Nichols. Director Huffer.
Now, just to follow up on what Director Nichols was talking about, I like the idea that CRPD is talking about some kind of webinars. Something else you might think about as part of the annual conferences, and they did it in the Zoom conference this year, but I've always found it very helpful with the roundtables. They have a director's roundtable and a general manager's roundtable. And, maybe once or twice a year or something like that, not just the conference, but one or two other times, if you had a director's roundtable with maybe half a dozen topics laid out in advance, so everyone's not just sitting there, well, I don't know, what do you want to talk about? But, put 20 or 30 directors onto a Zoom meeting where they can compare issues and concerns and ideas. I think could be very useful.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know if our general manager participated, but they did mention Michelle Lacey, who's on our board, is a general manager. I can't remember where, you may know. But she indicated that as a takeoff from this, they created a general managers roundtable, and they've actually had a couple of meetings and just say, hey, what do you want to talk about? And more kind of, like I said, that roundtable concept. And so the director said, well, we want one of those. So yeah, right on target. So thank you very much. And if you do have some specific topics, I'll feed that right to them. We'll get that information. Very good. Thank you.
And then just as a brief report, Doug already mentioned, we did the walk along with Jim, although I didn't recognize who that person was stepping out of the car the other Tuesday morning. But and then it was mentioned, I think Rochelle mentioned that the tax program did finish up yesterday, and I don't know the exact numbers, but we had a lot of very happy people who got their taxes done. So that's taken care of.
And again, thank you, Chuck, for that volunteer time that you put in for that program. It's very beneficial and successful for sure. Any other directors' reports? Okay, just briefly, as was indicated in our Recreation Division report, Rochelle mentioned that the month of July is Parks and Recreation Month, and I did go on the City of Thousand Oaks Council meeting to make a presentation. I overstepped my time or whatever and didn't get to make the whole report, but that's okay. It was good information. It's, and we represent an organization, but they still only gave me 3 minutes. So, and we've had Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy and MRCA meetings also since the last meeting. Any other reports? Then we're moving on to item 12, request for status reports and items for subsequent agendas. Anybody have anything? If not, items from the public. Do we have anybody on there?
Yes. So the way our system is set up, and I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to explain it because it's awesome that we have at least one person, Tracy, watching the meeting. I don't know if she's still on, but she had submitted a few questions or comments to Mark, and really what the agenda lays out is that if you want to actually speak and address during public comments, because of the way Zoom and the system is set up, we actually have to have advanced notice for you to be live and actually say your piece, and we can do that. So we just need about a day's heads up. So in the future, anybody who wants to participate by calling in, as something we want to make available during COVID, you can, and we just need about 24 hours notice, and you can just call our office if you want to have some explanation of how that works. With that said, while the board was discussing, or I guess I was doing the report about the COVID situation and the change that occurred this week with the sports fields and youth sports organization, there's a kind of combination of at least 5 questions or comments that hopefully I'll summarize and get right. But while we were talking, the writer, Tracy, wants to know how many COVID infections have come from so-called non-rule followers, I think in the context of sports teams not following the rules. how are we responding to the mental health of kids that are unable to play sports? Because sports are not just about college scholarships, it's about mental health. Little commentary, noticed not all of us are properly wearing masks. She'd like to know how we are supporting mental health for kids, because sports helps minimize the risk of getting into mischief, drugs, crimes, poor behavior. So if they're participating in healthy activities. And how are yoga and Zumba fitness okay, but not baseball and soccer? Why are they not allowed? This is very discriminative. And if I may, Chair, respond a little bit. Not to, like, I think Tracy's sentiments are similar to the districts. We really do want people together and out there exercising and doing in a non-COVID world. You know, we're about bringing everyone together. Like I said earlier, in the COVID world, we still think we can bring people together under the different direct guidance that we're getting from the health organization, the health officer in Ventura County. We don't make the rules, but we are a government organization and we kind of need to follow the rules. And the rule that came down this week is that team sports are not allowed, any aspect of a team sport, and specifically the day camp process that was kind of building around sports and kids being together. I think the health officer started to look at that as more of a loophole than what they were looking for in terms of fitness. So I think kind of editorializing, I don't know why Zumba and yoga might be okay, but baseball and soccer are not, other than to perhaps say that based on their own anecdotal observations of what's actually happening when they drive from park to park in cities throughout the county, they are not seeing the 6-foot separation that they would like to see when people gather from different households. So, you know, not the answer we want. Nobody wants COVID here. We're just trying our best to follow the public health guidelines and rules that come out. But we do, through REC, have still day camps that we offer through REC, and there are opportunities to get involved. So, and of course, the parks are open, the open space trails are open, and so that kind of activity is still allowed. So I do want to just say thanks to Tracy for typing in those questions, and again, for Tracy or anyone at a future meeting, if you want to, you know, speak actually to the board, you know, call us 24 hours ahead of time and we'll get your number and work that out.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. General Manager, and thank you, Tracy, for your questions. We're moving on to item 14, executive closed session. And Jim, if you would get us into closed session, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lang, members of the board. We actually have a need for 2 different closed sessions. Both are real property negotiations, both pursuant to Government Code Section 54-956.8. The first being involving 3.8 acres of property located at 384 Herbs Road. Agency negotiators, Friedel, Hare, Sellers. And speaking of Sellers, do you have his cell phone? Yeah. Tell him to zoom in. And the other real property negotiation involving a strip of land between Jantz Road and Page Lane, just west of the 23 freeway. It's owned by Caltrans, and we're going to be discussing price, terms, termination of what's called a Porter Bill lease. We do anticipate there may be an announcement following one of the 2 closed session items, the Page Lane, Jantz Road Porter Bill lease with Caltrans, that we anticipate having an announcement. With that, we're ready for closed session.
Thank you very much. And